Studio74 is Exeter's home of independent cinema. Tucked away within the vibrant multi-arts venue of Exeter Phoenix, our single-screen, 74-seat cinema space opened in 2015 with support from Devon Commercial Waste, Arts Council and Film Hub Southwest. Since opening 6 years ago, Studio74 has become a trusted landmark on Exeter's cultural landscape, with a programme that offers audiences a blend of the unseen, unknown and most desired independent British and world cinema. Studio74 champions collaborations. We've been privileged to forge relationships with organisations like Reclaim the Frame, We Are Parable, Tape Collective, Biffa and Fabian Film. Our screen has exhibited countless festivals, including our very own Scandi Film and Pursuit of Happiness seasons. Events like these and collaborations have brought us opportunities to engage with cinema in a way that would be otherwise unavailable to Exeter's audiences. Our passion for cinema bloomed from a commitment to support emerging film talent through our respected film commission scheme, which has supported hundreds of filmmakers since its launch 20 years ago. This vision to advise, nurture and develop filmmakers has given us a perspective which celebrates the diversity and colourfulness of visual storytelling, and this is very much sewn into our programming style. Sustainability was key to Studio74's development, and in 2015 its roof was crowned with solar panels. In that time, we've generated enough energy to exhibit over 8,000 films or 1,228 hours of screen time. Young audiences have always been a priority for us, and this year, with the support of Film Hub Southwest, we were able to launch our very first young audience panel and really get to the heart of our relationship with under 25s. Taking inspiration, ideas and findings from our young audience panel and the diverse community which surrounds them, we've been able to amplify Studio74's visibility and reach a new generation of young audiences through offering regional young creators opportunities to collaborate and take ownership. Studio74 is Exeter's home of independent cinema. It's the cinema our audience want, and it's the one they need.
To start the day. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Is everyone feeling awake and perky this morning? Yeah. Hello to everyone at home. Good morning, welcome to day 2. It's nice to see you all. So that was Exeter Phoenix with Studio74, and Claire, who was talking on that, is joining us for a panel later. So that was nice to see this morning. Some housekeeping to remind you of. If the fire alarm goes off, follow watershed staff because it's not a test. We have been together for a day or so now, but just to remind you to be vigilant around wearing masks, keep your distance a little bit, make sure that you use a hand sanitizer, that'd be really appreciated. Hopefully you enjoyed last night, for those of you that managed to see the show in the Dome. I think Live Cinema are here today, so if anybody wants to talk to them about it, they do have domes that you can have in your cinema venue, so go and have a chat with Lisa if you're interested in that. And I also think, Anna, are you still here from Beyond the Multiplex? Can't see with the light. She is. So if anybody wants to dig into the data from Beyond the Multiplex, go and have a chat with Anna, who's going to be around today. Anyone at home, drop us a line if you're interested in that, and we can hook up with some contact details. A reminder to use Menti. So we're definitely going to be using Menti for this session for Dial F this morning. The code's just on there. So if you're ready to get that loaded, it's going to be an interactive session this morning, so we want you to be ready to go on Menti. And I won't take up any more of your time. I'm going to introduce Jo for the Dial F session. Thank you.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for making it out this morning, especially for those that were doing karaoke last night as well. Day 2 morning session. It really means a lot that everyone's kind of turned out to come and hear from us and to kind of show your support and love for freelancers as well, and it's something that's very close to our hearts. As Sally said, we're using Mentimeter. This is so everybody that's here in the cinema and also at home can interact and be part of the conversation. We're not going to stop you talking to the person next to you, but please resist the urge to kind of move around and have conversations if at all possible. Before we start and before we introduce ourselves properly, what would be really helpful for us is we talk about things as freelancers. Freelancers are part of a organisation or a structure. So what we'd like to ask everyone is if you can raise your hands if you are a freelancer. Thank you very much. Sorry, people at home, appreciate that we can't see your raised hands. Who's here from a funding point of view? Who's here as an organisation? That might be an exhibitor or a festival. This is really nice. This is what we want the conversation to be about. We don't only want it to be freelancers talking. We want everybody to be part of the solutions to the challenges that freelancers are facing. So this is an opportunity today, if you're not a freelancer, to think how you can support freelancers as well, whether that's individually or whether in your role as an organisation as well. So a brief background to who we are, if you don't know. Everything we do is volunteer run. We don't get paid. We had very little funding last year from the Film and TV charity to get DILEF off the ground. So we're doing this because we're passionate about it. This is something that I think freelancers across the board are passionate about, are driven, are engaged. It rose from a need out of the pandemic. We recognised that there was no really central place for informational support. So we started a Facebook group that grew and grew and grew. That's got over 200 freelancers on it. And then we also launched the DILEF platform in October last year, which is kind of a directory, has resources on it as well as articles. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and also on our website as well. Just need to check if I've forgotten anything. Just to kind of talk about the session and what we're going to do today. Toki originally, I think 2 years ago in, not Liverpool. Yeah. Was it Liverpool? Nottingham. In Nottingham, kind of started a conversation around freelancers. And then last year we did a remote session for This Way Up. So we've talked about what freelancers should be having more of in terms of support and code of conduct before. And today's not a session where we want people to kind of bring problems. We want to find solutions. Let's all be part of like a positive change. So that's whether you're a freelancer, whether you're an organisation, whether you're an ally. We want everybody here today to work collectively together to kind of come up with ideas of how we can move things forward. The code of conduct that we've put together is based on conversations we've had over the past 18 months. We're not the authority on this. We're a very broad church. One freelancer is completely different to another one, so we want to hear all the voices, and that's the point of this today as well. So really kind of come with some energy and kind of positive thoughts in how you can kind of support freelancers going forward as well. And a kind of final point from us, as I said, we do all of this pro bono, we do all of this on a volunteer basis. So if you're part of an organisation, support us financially. Like, we should be being paid to do this work. And that's a really big thing for us. It's a really big thing for freelancers, being asked to give your knowledge and your experience for free. So it's great that you've turned up, but also go back to stakeholders and organisations where you work and say we need to be supporting freelancers as well. Thank you.
Hello, so I'm Moira, and for those that
Sorry,
you forgot that. So I'm a middle-aged woman with brown, wavy hair, with a blue jumper with lots of holes in, and a blue and white scarf, and I identify as she, her. So why do we need a code of conduct? We surveyed freelancers at the beginning of this whole journey, and this was a quote that really supported what we wanted to do. So I think we need to set standards for freelancers, including with rates and rights, among other issues, especially as someone who's new to freelancing, as I was when we did the last session. I think accessibility should also be encouraged to allow people of all backgrounds to work in our sector and lend their own perspective and experiences. So based on the conversations that we've had and the sessions we've run, this is where we've got to with the Code of Conduct. So these recommendations have been developed in consultation with freelancers and cinema exhibitors. The aim of this Code of Conduct is to ensure freelancers are recognised and supported as the valuable and essential element of the workforce they are, and to ensure equitable practice when freelancers are working with organisations. The DILEF for Freelancer team intends to carry out further consultation and research with the industry to refine these guidelines on an ongoing basis, with the hope that they will be a tool to help standardise practice and improve behaviour towards freelancers, specifically working in film exhibition and distribution. We know that there have been lots of conversations around freelancers working in production, but we're really focusing on film exhibition and distribution. So the 4 areas or themes that we have chosen to focus on with the Code of Conduct are the duty of care. We, just like everybody else, as freelancers, deserve a duty of care from the organisations who employ and depend on us. Wellbeing. Employers have a responsibility to ensure that freelancers' well-being is as considered and supported as the well-being of employees. There's some really brilliant stuff happening for employees now around well-being, especially because of the pandemic. It's really raised the awareness, but don't forget your freelancers. Pay rates and timescales. Freelancers consistently deliver essential work for organisations on time and to budget, and should be treated as any other essential supplier or service provider. And transparency. Accountability is essential to foster positive working relationships as a standard. So let's take you through our thinking. Joe. Oh, Toki, sorry.
Hi, Toki. I am a heavy-fringed, dark-haired, mixed race, pale-skinned woman with a red jumper, and I go by she, her. I was just going to say a couple of things just around the space that we're in today. So when you're sharing your thoughts later on, just have a bit of a think about confidentiality. So we'll be using Mentimeter, and I just kind of wanted to clarify that anything you post on there is visible to everybody that's using Mentimeter. So if you use names, organisation names, anything like that, it's not confidential. We're also being recorded in this space, and this is obviously also being streamed to the online audience. So just bear that in mind when you're having conversations in the room. We do also have a private email address, hello@dialefforfreelancer.com, which comes to the 3 of us. Anything sent there will be confidential. None of that information will be shared. We will not be sharing names or organisations. So if you have things to say that you don't feel you can say quite so openly in this space, then that's another area to use. Just kind of wanted to clarify that. Obviously, if we could all be respectful, there is a code of conduct for This Way Up as well. So if you could praise yourself with that and just remember that, we're here in a spirit of like sharing and positivity and trying to be progressive, I guess. The other thing to say about Mentimeter later on as well is just that it would be really helpful for us if you can state your position when you're posting on Mentimeter. So either say that you're like a funder, or if you're an exhibitor, or if you're a freelancer, just so we understand the perspective that people are talking about. And also, we really wanted to clarify that we know there are a lot of people who aren't here, whether online or in the room. Some people couldn't afford to be part of This Way Up. Some people are working in different ways within the sector. We still want that feedback as well. So anybody who's watching this recording later, or other people you know who should be feeding into this conversation, please tell them to get in touch with us. And I think that's probably everything on that front. We'll publish the Code of Conduct in the new year, so we've got a few more days after this to kind of round up any other thoughts if people want to send them through later. So please feel free to continue to talk to us about things. And then Joe, I think you're going to go through the first couple of points on here, aren't you? So yeah, we'll get stuck in.
And also, just to say with Mentimeter, if you see a question that's similar to your own or kind of an observation, like it, so we know that that's something that everyone is interested in, rather than a repetition of the same questions or points, would be really helpful. What I'm going to do now is say, I'm Joe. I'm obviously clearly very forgetful. I've got brown hair. I'm wearing a black top that's got a floral print on it, and I go by she, her. So what we're going to do is just run through those 4 points that we briefly touched on before, and then we're going to come back, and then you're going to have 5 minutes for each point to just, we haven't come up with a pithy like Mentimetering term yet, but kind of have collective discussions online or with a person sitting next to you. And we've got some prompts, but it's just kind of provocations for you to think about as well, and any observations are really, really welcome. And we're also always on the lookout for volunteers to help as well, to join us to be part of the steering group, because we want to hear all perspectives, because we recognise that we don't represent everybody as well. So, duty of care.
Sorry, Joe, can I just remind people of the Menti code, because it's come off the screen just before you kick off. So Menti code, if you don't have it, is 3794 7802. 3794 7802. It's back up.
It will also be on the prompt slide that we share with you at the end.
Thanks. Sorry, Joe.
Sorry. Oh. So these are kind of 3 points to start you thinking about duty of care. So you might want to start taking notes for yourself as we go. So for us, communication is really important. Freelancers, we believe, should be introduced to wider teams at the start of projects, connected with relevant collaborators, with clarity around their responsibilities to the project and shared accordingly. So not, I hate this term, onboarding someone at like the last possible minute. That's not a good way to kind of have a successful project, in our opinion. Line management should be clear and HR routes should be defined. There must be a scope contract which there must be a contract which defines the scope of any work, expectations on both sides in language that is understandable. Opportunities for professional development and career progression should be made available to freelancers as well. I think we all recognise there tends to be a lot of training programmes which aren't necessarily accessible to everybody financially if bursaries aren't available. So have a think about, if you're an organisation here today, how you can support freelancers that you work with consistently and that they're not at disadvantage to their employed peers as well. Wellbeing. Freelancers should be able to bring their whole selves to work without reproach. Our expertise should be recognised and respected. Feedback can be thoughtful and constructive and honest. I think everybody in the industry is conscious of like that term of whistleblowing, of kind of calling something out. And I think with freelancers, we really do feel it because, you know, we go from job to job. So we don't want to be labelled as troublemakers or people that voices opinions that might be against the grain of what other people are thinking. So it's thinking about how you can have safe space for those dialogues. Freelancers independently manage their finances, publicity, pitching, evaluation, relieving employers of that burden. So the sector's dependent on freelance work. Unions, skills providers, funders should consider freelancers nevertheless and equally in their policy and provision as well. Opportunities to connect with an organisation's workforce, particularly around wellbeing or in a view to combat isolation, should be offered to freelancers. And we're really kind of strong on that point, especially after kind of the past 18 months, that there should be provision for duty of care and for wellbeing for freelancers as well. And I'm going to hand back over to Toki.
So this is a big one that I know has been a big topic of conversation a lot lately. Well, a lot forever really, but pay rates and timescales. So we believe that rates, and when I say we, I'm talking about sort of, you know, the DILF community. We have a membership of like 200 plus, and plus a steering group of loads of people who've been involved in kind of refining this as well. The rates should be standardised with recommended rates of pay published and after consultation with freelancers, hirers and industry advocates. We really want this piece of work to happen. We can't afford to do this piece of work for nothing ourselves, and we need data from the industry to do this. So that's our kind of request to everybody in this space to kind of champion the need for that work to happen. Project fees should be clearly displayed as such and not referenced as equivalent to salaries. It's not the same thing. Freelancers don't benefit from sick pay, holiday pay, pensions, and it's kind of misleading to frame opportunities in that context. So just another thing to think about there, about how are we sort of talking about the work that we're offering. Payment terms should be discussed with freelancers to set up a reasonable plan. As a standard, freelancers should be offered 50% of fee up front and 50% on delivery. I mean, it depends. Have a conversation with freelancers. People like to be paid in different ways, but I think recognising that you're asking for a commitment from somebody, and there have been too many tales of people who've started work and maybe done a month's work and then a project's fallen apart and then they don't get paid, and you know, it's not okay to leave people without food on the table essentially, or their rent. Invoices should be paid on time with any queries raised promptly. So sole traders and small businesses, late payment affects the real livelihoods of people and their families. And then the last theme is transparency. So where organisations need freelancers from underrepresented backgrounds to bring authenticity to their diversity work, they should be honest about their intentions. Structures need to be put in place to ensure non-extractive ways of working and to protect these individuals from harm. So this is where we're really talking about, you know, we know a lot of people who work freelance are people who are from diverse backgrounds. That's often what happens, is like smaller grassroots organisations are being run by freelancers. If we're going to kind of, as larger organisations, going to try and hire these people in, you know, use them for our diversity credentials, tick the boxes for our funders, with the use of these people and they're bringing their kind of expertise on board, then that is not an equitable relationship. It's not a fair way to work with somebody, and we need to be offering something in return that really kind of values the kind of skills that are being brought in. Extractive, I would say, yeah, maybe we need to change the wording a little bit, but extractive is essentially taking. So it's taking from somebody. So it's not an equal partnership. It's about taking from those people. It's about using them for either their lived experience or their expertise, and not really recognizing that and offering value to it. Freelancers should be hired based on relevant experience and not on who is easiest to engage. So moving away from who you know to what they know. So I think we can all agree nepotism is a pretty massive issue across our industry, across all areas. So that's something that we would really like to address as well. So with all of those things in mind, I know it's a lot to think about. What we wanted to do now was look at each of the themes, give everybody 5 minutes to have a think about some of the real actions that can happen out of that work. So we don't want this to be a session where it's I've had this experience and this is really shit. What we want it to be is this is something that might have made that experience different. We would really like to have quite clear, practical ways that we can go out to the industry and say, here are things that need to happen. Here are things what's the next step from a code of conduct and how do we activate it and make it real? Sorry, I forgot more transparency points. Hang on, bear with me. So freelancers should be engaged early on in projects. They can influence and inform rather than just react and respond. An integrated approach like this results in better value for money, which we spoke about earlier, so not just bringing people in last minute. The power dynamic between hirer and freelancer means freelancers cannot criticise working practices without fear of impacting their future hiring prospects. Organisations should solicit honest feedback and adopt open and fair feedback processes without reprisal for those who speak out. So this is something Joe referenced earlier. So, commitment to this code of conduct will help freelancers and organisations to create better results together, forge more respectful and equitable partnerships, and lead to a healthier culture. A more robust workforce collaborating effectively can take on the challenges faced by exhibition and distribution to grow audiences for cinema, which is what we're all here for, right? I think it's important. This is a quote from somebody else who fed into our code of conduct survey a year and a bit ago. I think it's important this is a set of values that is managed by the freelancers as much as it is broadcast to the sector. Self-confidence and governance and empowerment around the code will be critical. So we really feel like it's important that freelancers' voices are really heard here. So here are our prompts. So this is the Menti code that you need to actually feed back live into this session now. For anybody watching the recording of this later on, we'd ask you to email. Nobody's going to be checking Menti after today. So please feel free to email us, hello@dialfforfreelancer.com. Anybody who needs to access, it's menti.com, and the code is 37947802. And the prompts are, what practical steps or actions can be taken to realise the principles in the code? Are there processes, structure changes, training needs, and what are they? And who needs to get on board, and how can they be encouraged to? And there are obviously other things that will come out of this, but we just thought those would help guide the kind of conversation that you guys might have. And so what we'll do is, if we say, we'll talk about duty of care for 5 minutes, and then we'll be feeding back what's coming through Menti. This is not going to be representative of the majority view of people here and online, because we're just going to be reading chronologically what's coming up, because we don't have the time to kind of field all of that down. But what we will do is further down the line, we're going to export all of the data that you guys are sharing today and make sure that all of that is kind of fed in to a set of outcomes from this, actions for the industry, which is exciting. So, duty of care. Are you gonna?
So if everyone wants to take 5 minutes on duty of care, and then we'll spend 2 minutes just giving a brief summary of what's gone into Mentimeter, and then we'll move on to wellbeing, pay rates and transparency, but do the same. So if everybody just concentrates on duty of care now, and although it feels like it might be a bit silent and quiet doing it, let's remember that we've got colleagues and peers that are watching from home, so they're having a bit of a different experience to us. Feel free to talk to the person next to you, but please resist the urge to get up and move around. Thank you.
Shall I just remind of the key points of duty of care?
Yep.
So the key points for duty of care were that communication is important, the line management should be clear, and professional development should be made available to freelancers. I'll set a timer. Right, you've got 5 minutes. Go.
If you can possibly think about framing what you're sending through.
Say it into here.
Yeah, if you can possibly think about what you're sending through on Mentimeter as a statement or positive action in response to the code of conduct rather than questions, that would be really helpful for us. We will try and address questions as much as possible at the end, although, as we've said, we don't all have the answers, and it's about everybody's collective thinking in the room. Thank you.
Can you please try not to put breaks if things run over time? Sure. Because it makes it more. As long as it's like at least a few minutes between the sessions. I don't think there's anything wrong with
I'm always like that. I'm eyes closed. Yeah, mouth open. Oh well. Just let them know when they've got 1 minute left. They've got 1.5 minutes.
I've not seen you. Yeah, I don't and also someone who I'm still with friends with. Just come it's like our self-made. Yeah, I know. I do feel bad though that he's had all the problems.
You've got 1 minute left on this theme.
Was it 3? Well,
maybe if there's a time to break that down,
That's your timer. Okay, so do you guys want to share a couple of things that have come out of Mentimeter?
Hello. Shall I read that one? Oh, well, I can't
Do you want to do the team meeting one?
So this is a really great one. Freelancers should be invited to team meetings as a matter of course, rather than receiving a bulletin of points and actions afterwards. Transparency. Oh, hang on.
Sorry, are you going to read it? Mentimeter, here you go.
Transparency about which roles in an organisation are freelancers and why, and advertise when new opportunities are available. Yeah, why are the roles freelance? This is from a funder. Organisations and institutions need to adopt a freelance employment policy in the same way they do with equality, etc., and funders need to require this.
I was just going to say on that point as well, I don't know if anybody's looked at Stockton Arc, but they've done some really good work around freelance kind of practice and policy recently, which was really good to look at. So yeah. I would recommend looking at their website and investigating.
So this is a good one from an exhibitor. We could introduce a standard induction process for freelancers that mirrors our induction process for staff. This would help give a structure to the process. I've done that one. Restructure change. Organisations could commit to a faster payment process when an invoice comes in from a freelancer. For example, 7 days instead of 30. Well, that'd be great. On contracts, the freelancer should feel able to request amendments and additions to the contract, e.g. to ensure that the support obligations of the organisation is spelt out and it is a two-way doc to be negotiated. Yeah, this is a really interesting point. IR35 creates issues around how you can integrate freelancers into teams, as there are specific rules about what constitutes freelance versus employee.
IR35, we know about that one now.
We do all know about that.
I'm going to cut you off because time, we've got 3 more to go through, sorry.
But thank you, there's really great stuff here and we'll be able to share it with everybody afterwards.
So the next theme for another 5 minutes is well-being. So this is about thinking about freelancers being able to bring their whole self to work, about the fact that they have a lot of work to do to keep working on their own, which isn't being covered by an organisation, around their finances, publicity, all of that stuff as well. And also around opportunities to connect with an organisation's workforce, so the team meetings that we might have spoken about, those kind of things as well. So just having a think about well-being for 5 minutes, please. I'll set a timer again and stick your comments in Mentimeter. Thank you.
Some background music.
Can we have some background music, please? Does that happen? Is that just like wizards there doing music? Hello.
It's difficult especially with dialogue, mixing the videos in real time. There's a
This is my lost little baby. I just can't drag you anymore. My poor little finger's sore. I'm tired of facing the floor, honey. your heart. This is my self-letter, baby. Just to satisfy my heart. One day I wrote and told you I was all alone and blue. Tuesday I wrote again, baby. I said I'm Lord. No one would give you
That wasn't really
Wednesday I'm right, you came
it was fine. I was fine.
begging you to fall. Thursday I've sent a message.
I've not really had jobs we have.
It's moved. It's actually moved. Freelancer should be.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Exactly. If I cancel at this point. Well, I think the problem is that so often I'm higher than the last place. So at that point, it's like it's not going to get cancelled.
No, yeah.
So it's more like I would like to be hired a bit earlier. That would be the main thing.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Because I guess they're trying to avoid that situation of cancelling. So they wait until the absolute final. I don't know.
It's fine, it's fine. No, they talk about it in the morning. This is your 1 minute warning, 1 minute left.
I don't really mind because like I mix and match, so sometimes I do some jobs that are payroll, and then I mix my temps and it's fine. Not really, no, because it's not. No, really, because yeah, if you do it at the same time, payroll because I have done that before, and that was bad.
You don't get that too.
It's different, yeah. Because I have done that before, I've been payroll in 2 places, and I got taxed for it. Horrible amount.
So you have to prove like your PA where you pay your tax already.
Yeah.
That's your timer.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone. So, Moira, do you want to let us know what you're seeing?
Yes, so some great ones again. Freelancers should be supplied with information about support offered to full-time staff, including access to employee assistance programs. Definitely. Oh, it's gone.
The reason
sorry,
there's
they
a
keep
bit
jumping
of a
around.
stall is Mentimeter's a little bit, tricky to
Okay,
work out.
this is about pay scales, but it's also well-being. Freelancers shouldn't be afraid to ask for a higher rate, or at least negotiate a higher rate, particularly given current inflation. Don't just accept what you were paid last year. Organisations and freelancers should agree on intellectual rights before projects begin. Oh yeah, how do we guard against overwork? I wish I knew that one.
It's a big question.
We need to get better as a culture at feedback, listening and receiving, at saying and creating space for, when you said X, it made me feel Y. Conflict resolution through communication.
I worked on a festival which had exit interviews with every freelancer, which felt great, as we could discuss which elements of the role and organisation needed improving. Having a designated lead contact who you can go to with questions, issues, etc., akin to a line manager, someone who will support and represent your issues, needs to the management of the organisation. People are freelance for different reasons. Organisations should make space to have conversations with each freelancer about their expectations and needs to make it a positive experience for all. Can we think about social codes of conduct? E.g., please don't WhatsApp me in the evening if we're in a client-contractor relationship, and please do write a testimonial about me online if you liked my work.
That's a good one. All right, do you want one more, and then I'm going to shut you off? Sorry. Try to keep to time.
And the film and TV charity would just like to flag, thank you, that we have a 24-hour support line, they have a 24-hour support line, that can give guidance around wellbeing for freelancers and plenty of self-help resources available on the website.
Thank you. Helpful reminder. We should have flagged that as well, actually. Okay, so the third theme is pay rates and timescales. So as a reminder, this was talking about standardising rates of pay, so there's less fluctuation and people have a bit more of an idea of what's reasonable to ask for and reasonable to offer. Project fees should be clearly displayed and not referred to as like a salary or not referenced as salary. And also thinking about kind of authenticity in terms of what a freelancer is able to do in terms of bringing them their whole self and their lived experience to work. So thinking about ways of working that protect people from marginalised backgrounds. Also, freelancers being hired on a basis of experience, so less nepotism. How do we work in those areas as well? Oh no, hang on, I've jumped ahead. God, I'm struggling today, aren't I, guys? Yeah, so thinking about properly discussing plans with freelancers in terms of their payment plan and then paying invoices on time as well. Those are the key things, sorry. And I'll give you 5 minutes starting now. You've got 1 minute left on pay rates and timescales. That's the end of your 5 minutes. So let's hear some of your comments.
Okay, this is a great one. We are a cinema, Hyde Park Picture House, and we have a rates card. We have shown it to a few people who say it looks standard, but we would like to compare it with others more widely. Very up for that.
Hooray!
Yay!
Well done.
Does anyone else have a rates card? Like, just put your hand up, you don't need to say where you're from.
Great.
So maybe you organisations can get together and start sharing as well.
Yeah, or send them to us.
Yeah, we can do a comparison.
Freelancers are entitled to add late fees, interest on unpaid invoices.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Oh, I got that one. Okay, yeah.
If it's a project fee for X months for X amounts of money, total, to be clear about how many days, hours a week you're expecting for that fee. And don't then be surprised if your freelancer has other part-time work on the go.
Who's had a late invoice here?
No
Day rate, I think.
No day rate should be below £100. Festivals with higher budgets need to pay their freelancers with a similar parity to their year-round staff, where you have producers, directors on 35 to 50k. Funding pots need to be open long enough or even rolling for organisations to properly consult with freelancers on budget, timescales, etc. This benefits us all, and we need more space, time to plan. Impacts on original timeframe need to be considered, particularly right now. Sickness, dependencies, changes in work, and delays to deliverables all need to be able to extend the timeline rather than be adding to pressure. If you're asking a freelancer to do something outside of their job description, ask them for a rate card for that specific activity. If recruiting underrepresented freelancers, explore obstacles to freelancing. Consider 100% payment up front if new to freelancing to reduce the fear factor. This is from a freelancer. Would hope a rates card doesn't undermine my day rate and give orgs an excuse to pay me less than current. Yeah, very good point.
It's a true worry, and I have thought about that as well. The dangers. But I guess the thing is as well, it's showing us, you can show a scale, can't you? You can show a scope within, because ultimately every project's different, isn't it? Every job's different. So some things are going to be more demanding or require specific expertise more than others.
How long should it be before a volunteer becomes a paid freelancer? What's the criteria for a freelancer?
Interesting. Right, one more, and I better cut you off again because we're running out of time.
This is from a funder. Need a rates card to be able to tell an organisation to increase their freelance budget with confidence.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so the last theme, transparency. I bungled the last list, sorry, because I've just obviously still haven't had enough coffee. So now we're talking about transparency. Now we're talking about underrepresented freelancers and structures and systems that can be put in place to support them. Now we're talking about like avoiding nepotism, so not with the who you know, but how do we actually really assess people based on their merit and what they know. We're also going to be considering getting freelancers on board on projects earlier so they can inform rather than landing halfway through something and just being like, quick, do this. And also thinking about the power dynamic. So how do you sort of provide honest feedback as a freelancer without fear of like reprisal from organisations? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes now. Go for it. Sorry, we're going to have to give you less time because I can't work out time. So you've actually got 3 minutes, which is now 2.5 minutes. Type like the wind.
Okay, so you've got less than a minute now. 30 seconds. 10.
Okay, I'm just going to go for it, yeah? Oh, that was it.
Okay, time's up, everybody. Thank you.
We need to value but not exploit lived experience difference. Take names off job applications, tenders. Don't recruit in our own image, but instead value the experience outlook of someone you don't know. I like this one. Provide time to advertise your freelance roles as an organisation rather than relying on going back to the same person each time. Mm-hmm. Allocate budget for pre-project freelance consultations to allow new opportunities to be explored. This is from an exhibitor. With organisations under time and capacity pressures, how can we make it easier to find people doing that work, especially outside London, without relying on people we know? Well, we have a website that wonderfully profiles all of the freelancers in our network, and it's a brilliant opportunity for you to have a look at them and find new voices.
Have you got any more? One more?
We've got a question that we've been holding on to right from the beginning of the session. So, thinking about Rico's session yesterday, should we only hire freelancers on relevant experience? What about those who need an opportunity to get that experience?
And I think that comes as well from working with funders and organisations about what their realistic expectations of a project are as well. Because if you're getting funding from certain people, they would like to give the opportunities to those that are starting out, emerging in those careers. But then if that's a distributor, for example, they're going to want to make sure that they're going to get the best campaign possible. So how are we marrying up what the funder wants, what the client wants, and also what works for the freelancer as well, so they're not feeling under pressure. So
I was just also going to, I guess, responding to the session yesterday as well, is just thinking about what do we actually value, like what is what people know? Is it just they know like the steps to deliver that project and the kind of, you know, their project management skills or whatever, or is it actually about emotional intelligence or lived experience or all of the other things that you can bring to a project? Your understanding of community is the way to do kind of meaningful outreach, all of those things that maybe we don't put enough onus on. So it's kind of looking at those ideas around a job spec as well.
And giving people with transferable skills the chance to demonstrate them. We've got to stop now.
So a very big thank you to everyone for coming out and for taking part and doing it in not the most interactive way that we weren't talking to each other. So yeah, thank you everyone for your thoughts. If you've got any questions, any observations, please just get in touch with us. We're going to be here today, so come and say hello. Our email address is up there as well. Yes, thank you very much. And we'll have something put together in the new year for everyone to look at. So thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for taking part. That was a really, really informative session. That was great. So we have a really quick comfort break, so go grab a cup of coffee. We're going to set the screen up for the greenest building is the one that already exists, which starts at 11:10, so you've got a super quick time to grab a coffee.